Welcome to Soul Reset, the sanctuary for your soul's revival. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the depths of the human experience and the nurturing of your soul. Each week, we'll dive into thought-provoking conversations with experts, storytellers, and everyday people who offer unique perspectives on topics ranging from personal growth and spirituality to resilience and transformation. I'm your host, Tamika, and I'm excited to embark on this soul journey with you. Let's go. Hey y'all, today's episode is a little bit different. So what happened was, my guest and I were talking prior to the interview, and I said, let me go ahead and click record because I don't want to forget to start recording. You know, ADHD break. However, when we started talking, so much was said that I was like, I need to share this part too. So, today's episode is going to start a little bit different, and it's going to start from the conversation prior to the interview, and then we're going to go into the interview. Okay? Because you need to hear this today. So, here we go. We'll start over later, but go ahead and tell your story.
Yeah. So,
I just don't want to forget.
Yeah, so she had said, she had made a comment, and aha moment, completely changed things for me. And I said, sharing what she was going through. I said, why haven't you shared with your mom? Because, y'all are close and so on and so forth. And she was like, because she's just going to tell me to go to God with it. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, and therefore she won't have to take responsibility as a mom. I said, whoa, wait a minute. I ain't never look at it like that. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, so you're telling me that when she sends you to God, for you, it feels like she's negating herself of responsibility of having to be a mom. She said, yeah, because then she don't have to help me. God will do it. God will fix it. And you said something earlier that reminded me of that when you was like, it's easy for people to want to concentrate on, for lack of better words, the wellness of their spirit. Because the spirit ain't your responsibility. The soul, though, that takes some work. And so as long as I focus on the spirit, it's up to God he got to figure that out. He got to correct that. He has to make that well.
The spirit is his. The soul is yours.
It's yours. Yeah. And that's your responsibility to figure out, what does this thing need in me? What's missing? What's lacking? What's deficient? Like what's necessary? And so that takes work, and people don't want to do that. And so since that conversation I had with that client, I've been just, even within myself, being conscious of making sure that I'm not being negligent because I'm spiritual. I am responsible for helping people within my capacity. And yes, God does some water, some plant, some water. He does the increasing. Don't mean you ain't got to plant or water.
That means you got to plant and water.
You got to plant and water. You got to do two things.
You got to have something to increase.
Got to have something to increase. So yeah.
That is so good. That's so good.
He created the mind, the body, the spirit, the soul. Like he created, that is our entire being. And he didn't do it and want us to forsake an aspect of it. All of it is necessary in order for us to be well. Above all, I wish that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul. Out of all stuff, God believes in soul prosperity.
That is the scripture. That is the premise of my podcast. Wow. I don't quote it every episode, but that is the premise. For your soul to be prosperous. And when we see all these other things happening, it's because our soul is not prospering.
Yeah.
And so that is absolutely the premise of my podcast, so that our souls will prosper. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Soul Reset, the sanctuary for your soul's revival. I'm your host, Tamika, and I am excited to join you on your soul journey today. In today's episode, I have the honor of welcoming LaSaisha McFadden. LaSaisha McFadden is a smart, intentional, and purpose-driven young woman with a master's in counseling and certification in life coaching. In just a short span of time,
Many people have been impacted by her assistance, insight, and counsel. Her goal is to help you heal from what you've experienced in the past, understand where you are now, and identify where you are going. I am excited to welcome Sasha McFadden. Welcome, Sasha.
Hi, thank you so much for.
So excited to have you here today. But before we get started, we just read the bio, but we are nosy and we want to know more. So, in our Say More segment, we ask each guest 5 questions to learn more about you. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably French fries. Yeah,
Um,
it just became my thing the past couple years. I don't know why, but French fries, I think I'll be good.
what's the best fries?
Who has the best fries? McDonald's might be when they hot and fresh. I ain't gonna lie.
They got to be
McDonald's,
hot and fresh because you give them
yeah, they
15
gotta be
minutes,
hot and
they
fresh.
don't.
If not, yeah, you gotta bring it back.
Okay, question number 2. If your soul had a theme song, what would it be?
Um, my soul had a theme song. That's a good question. I don't know the name of it, but that song that says, "I hope you dance." If you get a chance to sit it out or dance, I
Mm,
hope you dance. So I think that would be my soul's theme song. Because it's not like I didn't have an option to sit out or dance, but you know,
I
chose
love
to
it.
dance. Yeah.
Fill in the blank. My favorite place is.
By the water. By the water.
Next question. You are crafting a day dedicated to nurturing your soul. It's 3 parts. What are you doing? Where do you go? And who are you with? They can be living or dead.
It's a good question. Now I'm used to making people think. Um, I'm absolutely, as stated, I'm going by the water. Not, I'm not a big beach fan. I don't like the sand, but I love the water. It's odd. So I don't know where that would be, like a direct location, but I know I'm gonna
Mhm.
be by the water.
Okay.
Um, my immediate thought was that I would probably be alone. I'd probably be alone by the water. But then you said anybody, so now I feel like I gotta pick a person.
Well,
Um,
everybody that has said water has said alone.
yeah, maybe that's maybe that is my company. So
Yes.
I just yeah.
I've noticed that everyone who said water, they're always alone. So maybe that's a
Really?
thing.
Okay, so maybe that's the thing. Yeah, look at you. You tapped into it. You figured us out.
Okay. And my thing is water, and I would be alone too.
You would
So,
be alone.
yes.
Okay. All right. Good. So I'm gonna leave it.
Last question. The motto or mantra I live by is.
Keep going. Everything you need is in front of you. Everything you need is in front of you. So keep going.
Absolutely. So, we're going to jump into today's conversation. We are not absolutely sure where this is going, but we'll start, right?
Yeah.
So I will just tell you all, I've been acquainted with LaSaisha for many years through ministry, but I became acquainted with her professionally through her social media account. If you haven't followed her already, she's going to give you the information later. Make sure you do that because she has a way of pulling you together in like a minute and 30 seconds. It's really, really, I mean, it's so quick. You get stabbed and you don't even realize it until you walk away. It's like, bam. But I was so drawn to it because of the different topics that she talks about. While it's not always necessarily preaching at you, it is always faith based and ministering to you in a way that you may not have been ministered to before. Through her education, her clinical knowledge, and things like that, she's able to kind of just jump to the root of issues. And so, one of the ones that really stuck out to me was the one that she spoke about vulnerability. And I think that that is something that we often run away from, but we need so bad. And so I just want you to quickly define what vulnerability is and why you believe it's essential for us now in nurturing our souls. As I've become older, um, this is very interesting what I'm about to say. I think my level of vulnerability used to be uncomfortable for people, so I learned to pull back. But
Mm.
now the generation that is following us, they are very vulnerable. And so for those of us who are quote unquote older, I hate to say that, but finish it up. I think that there's such a lesson to be learned from the next generation. So how would you define vulnerability?
I think in my video I mentioned it when I was studying it. The Latin word for it really stood out to me. And then the Latin definition for vulnerability, it actually means wounding. And so what I realize is vulnerability is not just the exposure of our wounds, because that's what a lot of us is trying to hide our vulnerability from. We don't want to be vulnerable because we don't want people to see our scars. We don't want them to see our wounds, our deficiencies, and our voids and things of that nature. But it's not just the exposure of that. It is also you taking the risk to be further wounded. And so I think it encapsulates the fullness of wounding. Here's what wounded me and how I was wounded. Here is my wound, the revealing of it. But I'm also setting myself up for the risk of being wounded again. And so we have 8 overall negative emotions that every human being tends to have inside of them. And one of them is actually vulnerability. The ironic part is that the other 7 can actually be dealt with if a person is willing to be vulnerable. So vulnerability actually helps you deal with the other 7 negative emotions: disappointment, sadness, embarrassment, shame. Those things, if you are willing to be vulnerable, it can be helped. So while vulnerability is risky, it is worth it, because then it helps you manage everything else. So, and that ain't the Webster dictionary definition, but that's what I see it as.
So what do you think we are more adverse to? Are we adverse to being seen? Is that why we don't want to be vulnerable?
Yes. If I have not dealt with wounded me, if I have not dealt with the issues of my soul and the issues of my heart, I don't even know what you're going to see if I expose you to it. So now I'm allowing you to see a me that I didn't even look at yet. I have no idea what you're going to see. And sometimes that's the fear of vulnerability. And it ain't always because, like, I know what you're going to see. If I didn't deal with none of that yet. I can tell you about my childhood trauma, but if I didn't deal with it, I don't know what it really looks like. I can talk about it, but I ain't sit in it. I didn't deal with it. And so I think we don't want to be seen. Part of why we don't want to be seen is because we have no control over what's going to be seen. What me are you going to see if I'm vulnerable? So.
That's so interesting, because it's like everybody sees me but me, right? When you walk around every day, you're not looking at yourself. Everybody is looking at you, and you have no idea what they're looking at until they say there's a booger in your nose. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, until somebody points it out.
Right, until somebody points it out to you. And so that is kind of scary, that people are seeing things that you may not see yourself.
You may not see. Yes.
But how do we get to a place that we become comfortable? I've seen it happen. Like, I've seen people become vulnerable, but a lot of times it's really after being crushed. And it's like, it's not until they get rock bottom that they're like, oh, let me be vulnerable.
Yeah, you got nothing to lose. Here's my vulnerability, right? Like, I think we find comfort, and there's a duality of vulnerability. And there can also be almost 2 aspects. There's the non-conscious vulnerability, which we all have, which means that everybody has vulnerability in them every day, all the time. So it's always in us. It's non-conscious because you're not aware of it. So what ends up happening is something happens, or we see something. And so as Black women, we see something happen to a Black woman, and it's going to evoke an emotion out of us that might make us feel fearful or something of that nature. What that is that non-conscious vulnerability is being brought to our awareness. And so now I'm conscious of how vulnerable I am as a Black woman. It was non-conscious until something triggered it, and now I'm aware. But that vulnerability was in me this whole time. It got brought to the surface. The other part, of course, is the conscious vulnerability, and that is the decision to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is a choice. And so how we get there is not waiting for something to trigger, right? Not waiting for something to bring me aware. It's my conscious decision. And I have a client which honestly sparked that video that I did, and even this study on vulnerability, an amazing client that was struggling with vulnerability. And so I'm gonna help you be vulnerable, but I've got to do some digging myself. And what I realized was I was uncomfortable with vulnerability, and I was uncomfortable with being exposed because I didn't know what people were going to see. And so I too, while I'm making her work on it, I started working on it. Identifying safe spaces, using those safe spaces, and with pace and wisdom, exposing more of me. Here's my vulnerability. And again, if we go back to that origin of the Latin word, here's my wounds. And I understand that by exposing you to it, that I am risking being wounded even more. I'm willing to take the risk. It is my decision, conscious decision. I am choosing to be vulnerable.
And something that you said, and that was so key in that video, is that you were saying, I think it all started off with you saying, I don't want sympathy, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you were trying to figure out why why don't I want sympathy?
Yeah, yeah. And it's always been a thing of mine. Like, don't feel bad, don't. And I'm like, wait, as a human being, number one, I need it. And then the other part that I struggled with the most was that I deserve it. I deserve sympathy. There are things that I have experienced, and I deserve for people to feel bad for me, to feel sorry for me. Like, and it's okay. But that stoic nature that a lot of us are born with, especially if you are called to help people. That's the video of the mismanaged gifts, right? Like, so if you are called to help people, and that this thing is in you with the ability to bear burdens above the average person because you will have to help people carry theirs.
Yeah.
That thing gets mismanaged when you're young and ain't nobody doing what you're doing because there is no soulish business that is helping people do that. And so no one is telling us what to do with what's inside of us. And so I have this strength in me. I don't know what to do with it, so that I internalize all of it. I don't need all that strength for me. I need my strength for them. It is okay for me to have those moments of weakness, to need sympathy and to be vulnerable. But this is new language for me, even within myself. I'm still learning this because, and then we didn't see it.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't see it in the leaders. We didn't see it in the parents. We didn't see it in the elder. We didn't see it in the older people. Vulnerability was only weakness. But you are never more emotionally strong than you are vulnerable. You can measure a person's emotional strength by how vulnerable they can be. It is not, there's a duality, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is weakness.
Yeah.
But it is also emotional strength.
And when you were talking just now, it brought me back to a video where you said, be a burden.
Yes.
And I played that a few times because I was like, what? That was a vulnerable moment for me because I'm like, be a burden. And so if you could just like touch on that a little bit, because it goes exactly with what you were just saying about, those who are gifted and things like that. And we're always bearing the burdens of others, but to be a burden.
Yeah.
You said it's okay. Be a burden.
It's okay, because being a burden is being vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
It's the acknowledgement that I'm weak. And so it is okay to have moments. As long as you are human, you are going to be in need by design, and your needs do not go away just because they're unmet, right? And so you're going to consistently throughout life have needs, whether you meet them or not. You will still have those needs. And in that, it is okay to be a burden on other people because you are in need. I'm heavy right now. Somebody help me. The irony in it, as we were talking earlier about that spirit and soulish realm, and I mentioned it in the video, is that Jesus did not carry his own cross by himself. He didn't do it. They had to pick somebody out the crowd and say, hey, you, come here. Help him carry this. Help him carry this. And so then, who do I think I am? I don't need help carrying my cross. Like, and then who taught me that, right?
Right. Where did I get that from?
Where'd I get that from? That I won't need help. And that it's I'm not okay being a burden. No, be a burden. Be a burden. I ain't my best self. I'm not my strongest self. Today I feel weak. Today I feel emotional. Today I don't have it in me. I don't have the courage. I don't be a burden. There are 8 billion people on this earth. At least one of them have the capacity to help you carry.
Absolutely. But the more I listened to that, the more I was like, I know that I have people in my life who are willing to carry whatever it is with me. It's my
Yes.
vulnerability, right? I won't be vulnerable enough to say I need
To let
this
them. Yes. Yeah.
for fear of whatever that fear is, for fear of the need not being met, for fear of being rejected, for fear of that need being abandoned, whatever the case may be. That doesn't have anything to do with them, though. That has everything to do with
Mhm.
me and all of these thoughts and ideas that I made up in my head, right?
And conscious vulnerability is knowing all of that, being aware of all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and deciding to be vulnerable anyway.
Mm.
Knowing all of that. You may disappoint me. You may not have the capacity. You may let me down. You might expose me. You might not be able to carry me to the finish line, but I am going to be vulnerable anyway. And I'm going to acknowledge this thing anyway. There is such, as I've been practicing it within myself, there is a freedom in it. Forcing yourself to not practice that vulnerability is agreeing to stay in bondage.
Mm.
And then we mad at everybody else when we have, I am my own chain master. I have handcuffed my own self.
Mm-hmm.
I am my own prison guard while being imprisoned. And the way out, my agreement to be vulnerability. This is me. This is me, the fullness of who I am. And I ain't less gifted. I ain't less called. I ain't less good at what I do just because I'm all of me, all of it, all of it. And as you know, you deal with the soul,
Mm-hmm.
that's the missing piece that a lot of people are staying away from. They will
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you about every other aspect of me. I could tell you about my spiritual growth, and when I wasn't spiritually strong. I could tell you about my body and what I went through, autoimmune disease. I could tell you about all this other stuff. I don't mind talking about that. Ask me how dark my soul was, and
Right.
we ain't gonna talk about that. All you need to know is I'm on this podcast right now. I'm doing good, right? That's the part that we keep hidden.
Yeah.
That's the part that we don't want to be vulnerable with.
I think that also a lot of the part of us not being vulnerable is it's almost like pressure from society to be flawless, right? And so
Yes.
there's this pressure that comes from wherever it comes from, especially
Mm-hmm.
with social media, and we're getting the highlights of people's lives. And so we see this person's life is quote unquote perfect, right?
Right.
So it's hard for us to be vulnerable because now you're going to see that I'm actually in shambles.
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
we do with that pressure from society to be perfect?
You know, one of the things that helped me, and I be cheating because I'm exposed to so many people's weaknesses and vulnerabilities and things of that nature just in what I do. But it is an understanding that we all have them. So for me, and I have people around me and some friends and things like that that do struggle or battle with that social media pressure of living up to the standards of social media, of having to be perfect and look perfect and everything. And I look at everybody on my timeline like, yeah, I don't care how beautiful or great the pictures look. Please, God bless them, because everybody's dealing with something.
Something.
We are not exempt. So I think that understanding that allows us, the flip side though is if I am unwilling to give grace to my own issues and my own life being in shambles because I don't want to deal with it or I don't want to face it, then yes, I will lack compassion for other people. So I can't look at them and the deficiency of their life because I'm unwilling to even see mine. And so my ignoring of weaknesses goes now across the board. And so honestly, the more willing you are to look at yourself and be like, man, I'm good, I'm gifted, I'm beautiful, I'm called, I'm all this other stuff, and I'm a mess. You know what I'm saying? Like at the same time, I'm a hot mess. Then
Yeah.
you can look at other people and be like, she's beautiful, she's gorgeous, she's wonderful,
And she's a
she's
hot mess
probably a hot
too.
mess too. Yeah. She's a hot mess too. So I think just psychologically just understanding that we all, yeah, it looks beautiful and wonderful, but we all got some stuff with us, and it doesn't make you as inadequate as we think it does.
Mm.
You're not insufficient because you have deficiencies. That's not what that means. You are still more than enough. You're just human. And that's the part that certain people struggle with, their humanity.
Wow. I had a thought just now, and it's so random. But when you were just talking, I thought about when we were growing up. There was this lady that I really admired. I didn't realize until afterward that I really had her on a pedestal in my mind. And so one day I'm at church, and she's the speaker for the night, and she runs in the bathroom. She's like, "I gotta pee. I gotta pee." You're not supposed, like, you're perfect. You don't pee, right?
You know,
No. You're perfect. Like, I didn't even know you go to the bathroom.
right.
Sometimes it's not even the people, it's ourselves, like the ideas of people that we come up with ourselves that we're comparing ourselves to, and we put people on these pedestals, and they're like, I wish you would really know.
Yeah.
I wish you
Yeah.
would really know the struggles
Yeah.
and things that I have to go through. And I see that happen a lot of times, especially with gifted people. We know how to put it on. When it's time, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? We could be in shambles in the background, but when it's time to perform, we know exactly what to do, and we can turn it on, turn it off. Even in that creative community, it's sometimes hard to find a space where you can be vulnerable because everybody's always on.
Yeah. To me, my ultimate purpose or goal is to work with that population at the highest extent, and not because they're rich and famous. Like, it's because they're so influential, and because the masses follow them. And so my goal is always like, if I can help you, then I can help all the people that's looking up to you, and that's how I'll be impactful. That'll be my legacy. But I grieve to a certain extent for creatives, for entrepreneurs, for trailblazers, for people who are setting the standard, for the rich and famous, for the influencers, because there's no greater pressure for people pleasing. If we took them off stage and took the crowd from them and took the likes away, what we would see is a people pleasing adult that probably was a parent or guardian pleasing child. And that ability to perform for acceptance, for love, for appreciation, for acknowledgement, matched with a gift, and then it got maximized. So it's not even just that there's no safe spaces when they come off from the public. They don't know who they are when they come off the public. I don't know what you I'm gonna get if you don't have a microphone, because you don't know who you are without it. And that's why we
Mm.
see the drug use. That's why we see the mental health issues within, because it has to be mind-boggling to stand on a stage and have thousands of people singing my song, and then to get off and nobody wants anything to do with me. It has to be mind-boggling to create content or to create a product or have a business that makes people look good or smell good or sound good or people really like and all that other stuff. And then I close that app and my phone is dry. Don't nobody want to.
Ain't nobody checking for me. Yep.
Not at all. And that has to be confusing to the mind. But just a minute ago, and then now, and then what we do is we look at them, we call them bipolar, because we think that their emotions are up and down. No, we treat them up and down, and
Mm.
they don't know how to deal with that. And so it is, to me, I again, I know grieved is such a strong word, but my heart grieves for the people who feel like, if I'm not who people need me to be, then I am nothing. And there's a lot of creatives, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business people, a lot of helpers, a lot of counselors, a lot of people, a lot of leaders, a lot of pastors, that
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not shepherding them, these people don't care about me. And that's a lonely place to be.
The two people that immediately came to mind when you were talking were Whitney Houston and Robin Williams. And
Yes.
those are people that I feel like should still be here today.
Yes.
But because
100%.
they couldn't manage all of that
Yeah.
behind the scenes. And we're like, you had a great career. You had a great voice. Why are you dead? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
wasn't what we saw. It's what
It
we
wasn't.
didn't see.
Yes. And it's what the people around, and I'm not blaming the people around them,
Nope,
but
I got you.
needing more people to see beyond just the surface. And that's why, if you don't do what you do, then we will have more of them, because
Mm.
somebody needs to deal with the soul of human beings. And I don't care what your status is. I don't care who you are, where you come from. Somebody has got to get to the soul. We have never been more soul impoverished, and to a point where I believe that is the attack. I think it's starting in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the goal is to go then to the heart, because then we got a lot of broken-hearted people that whose heart are in shambles. But the ultimate purpose is to get to the soul. And so we need retreats, and we need podcasts, and we need businesses and monthly things that allow people to have the soul renewed, refreshed, dealt with, acknowledged. These are celebrities, like you said, that should still be here.
Yeah.
Couldn't deal with what was going on in the soul.
Just along those lines, I'm thinking about how vulnerability is also connected to authenticity.
Yes.
And we can't be vulnerable in spaces where, well, number one, if we are not authentic to ourselves, but in spaces where we don't feel that we can be ourselves. And so what I mean by that is I live in Atlanta. I'm not calling everybody in Atlanta inauthentic. That is not what I'm saying. However, it is like a big, I mean, compared to where I come from, right? Compared to Connecticut,
yes,
Atlanta is, I mean, it's really something. And it's been hard for me to connect with a lot of people here because I'm so used to the Northeast, right?
Yes.
Where everything is cut and dry.
Yeah.
If I don't like you, you're gonna know that I don't like you, and it doesn't have to be any beef between us. It's just gonna be
we just
don't, right? But when you get here and you get in spaces, and it's like, and I'm not saying this doesn't happen everywhere else. I'm just using my experience right now. But it's like people will laugh with you, talk with you, joke with you. So good to see you. All the things, and turn around and it becomes something completely different. And so it's not that I have not been able to be my authentic self, but I do not choose to be vulnerable in those spaces. Do you get what I'm saying? So
yes.
even knowing when and when not to be vulnerable is so important.
Safe spaces are not safe for everything. So there are spaces that are safe for specific things. For example, if I was to put gas in your car, it's safe. If I put gas in your house, it's unsafe. And so that makes it toxic, right? And so say certain things, this fits for that.
Yeah.
Certain things, this just don't fit for that. And so what's hard is because it took us so long just to start using safe spaces. That's a new age word. It took us so long just to be able to realize and acknowledge that, okay, we do have safe spaces, but then there is a next step to that. Being able to identify what exactly is this space safe for. It is not safe for everything. And so there are certain places where like, okay, I could have my glasses off because I trust that y'all not gonna let me bump into a wall or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And then there's other spaces where it's but I will not leave my wallet open around y'all because y'all ain't safe enough for that. Other places, here's my credit card, all this other stuff. I trust you to do that, but it's not safe for other stuff. So I think our role in having to identify, and this stuff is a lot of work, right? I understand why people, don't complete the work because it is a lot. And you're forever growing and learning, but certain things are not safe for everything. And so I think that's just what you're describing. So you could be a safe space or someone could be a safe space. They're just not safe for everything. And it's identifying that.
How do we become a safe space? And how do we know who we should be a safe space for?
Yeah. You can measure how safe you are probably by how vulnerable you can be. Because vulnerability does do something that we didn't get to touch on. Vulnerability does open you up. And so if you're a safe space, that means people are going to need access to you. And they can't get access to a closed you. And just because I'm open don't mean, again, because I've got to be wise and gauge how safe you are, and how open you can get, close you can get, and all these other things, wisdom in this entire thing. But that willingness to be open or to be a little more open. And then that's what creates safety. But then also just being honest with yourself. Some people are just not honest with themselves. Right now, I ain't safe for nobody because I ain't safe for me. And just being open and honest and just transparent about that. But then also knowing I've been doing the work. I tell my clients all the time, I'm trying to help you become the best version of yourself and to live the most fulfilled life. But I hope that in everything I'm teaching you, that it's also teaching you how to read and learn people as well.
Yeah.
We ain't just learning how to look for safe spaces. I hope you're learning how to be one. Because the more you grow, the more you heal, the safer you become. If not, then you are always going to be some level of a dangerous space. Because you don't got to be completely healed, but you need to be in the process of healing. So I think we become that the more that we heal. The more that we heal, the more vulnerable we can become. And then how do we tell who we should be safe for? Was that the second part?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is hard. I'm laughing because anybody who knows me closely knows, like, one of the moment you start getting close to me, my first question, who sent you? That's my first question. Who sent? And be honest with me. You know what I'm saying? I got a message for whoever sent you, depending on where you came from. So that's my thing. Who sent you? But it derives transparently out of a fear that people are trying to attach themselves to me for an ulterior motive. And so that lack of comfort, that lack of safety makes me be like, I've got to be shielded for everybody. So in my growing and learning and becoming more vulnerable, my vulnerability might not look like the other person's. The other person's vulnerability might look like spilling all of their guts. My vulnerability might be allowing people access to me, because I can only help you as close as I allow you to connect with me. And so for me, it's been that. I ain't gonna sit up here and lie, because we keep it real. I still, who sent you? That is still my first question, and then after that, think about it, give me some time, and but then also just identifying the fact of I didn't choose this. This was given to me. And so if I'm going to steward it well, I have to do that. Something, not even be spiritually deep, but something that completely wrecked my life. And I was in Florida by the water, of course, and praying. And I've been taught my whole life how to learn to trust God. So God is ministering to me by the water, and he says to me, I trust you. And I trust you with the thing I value most, people. I gave my son for people, and I trust you with that. And it wrecked me, because I only knew trust one way, that I need to trust God. I was unprepared for the fact that God trusted me, and he trusted me with people. And it really challenged me to be like, okay, I've got to put some of my guard down. I got to put down some of these weapons, put all my guns away.
All your shields.
Yeah. Like, all right. And I mean, one of those things when you take off everything. How did it? It's like 10 minutes later, I'm still taking stuff off.
Right.
Knee pads, shoulder pads, like everything. Because people do need access to me. And it's also just trusting and knowing that I have enough wisdom, I have enough discernment, and I have enough just natural intelligence to know you don't mean any good, or your time has run out, or you've reached your proximity. I guess the answer to that question would be the cuss word, boundaries. How do you know who to let in? If you have boundaries, I tell people all the time, defense mechanism keeps everybody out, and it keeps you behind a wall, but it also keeps you stuck.
Yeah.
Boundaries allow you to be mobile. So I can engage with different people, and I can interact with people, and I can be safe spaces for different people because I have boundaries. And if a line gets crossed or anything of that nature, I can shut it down. That's why I have the boundary.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, you call the people, we don't really get to choose too much. You got to be as open as possible, but keep boundaries, and that will be your protection device.
That's so good. So this all started from you having a conversation with one of your clients and telling them to be vulnerable, and you had to go on this vulnerability journey yourself. What does that look like? How do we even embark on that?
Okay, so what it looked like, just in a literal laying it down format, is starting with, where are my safe spaces and what are they safe for? Now, it's dispelling your natural instinct, that survival instinct in us, that will tell you immediately you have no safe space. That's trauma. And trauma is fear that won't turn off. So that's why you feel like you have no safe space. Nobody's safe. You can't trust nobody. And that is just not true. That is not true. There are people, at least one, and more than one, if we're willing to figure out what these spaces are safe for. You have people around you that you can expose pieces of you to. What the journey looked like, and specifically for this client, was identifying those safe spaces and then being emotionally vulnerable, which was just literal. And it might sound super simple or basic for some, for others, it might sound like the end of the earth. Acknowledging what you feel, starting there. If something bothers you, or somebody hurt your feelings, or I reached out to you and you didn't text me back, and instead of like just going cold or just whatever, getting an attitude or posting subs and all the other stuff that we do, you hurt my feelings when you did not answer yesterday, and it made me feel rejected. And like that has been like,
are we saying that to them, or are we saying that to us? Are we saying that to ourselves, or are we saying that to them?
We saying it to them because we being vulnerable. Yeah. But we got to say it to us first, right? Because you got to be able to identify why you were triggered.
Yes.
Right? So why do I feel a way in the first place? So that, being able to identify what you feel, giving language for it. I'm in the process of trying to put something together to help people get language for it. So we're not pulling stuff out of thin air, but give language to it and then be able to communicate it. Because that's the piece that because I could sit with the fact that you triggered me and it made me feel rejected. I'm fine with that piece. I ain't going to give that to you, because that's me exposing a wound and then setting myself up at the risk of also being wounded if you're like, that's dumb or that's stupid or who cares, or you ignore that too. It's taking the risk anyway and not being tied to a specific outcome. When something involves the participation of another human being, you cannot control the outcome.
Yeah.
Because another human being is involved. So the only thing I have control over is me. If I am willing to make a vulnerable statement to you and acknowledge something, how you may, and it don't just got to be negative, right? It can be something positive. And me acknowledging that and being vulnerable in that, that's all I have control over. And it's in doing that. So I think those steps of identifying safe spaces, who's safe for what, and finding aspects of yourself that you might have closed off, and piece by piece, kind of unveiling some of this truth of who you are. It allows you to be vulnerable. You cannot build healthy and sustainable relationships without vulnerability. If not, then y'all are just characters in a movie. And at some point, you waiting for somebody to yell cut, and that's it. But this is real life. And if you're going to have real relationships, you're going to have to be vulnerable. So starting small, just acknowledging how you feel. And it's just you don't got to be prompted. Anybody listening to this today, you finish this podcast, you find one person to send a message to and say something that just makes you feel vulnerable. You say it, you throw your phone and walk away, And go,
don't wait for a response. Don't wait for the bubbles. Just walk away.
Run away, throw your phone away. But give it a shot.
Absolutely. And that is actually what you just said was actually a great segue into the next question I was going to ask, because my next question was about vulnerability and difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable, I'm thinking about it. I can actually not be vulnerable when I'm happy.
Yes.
But
this is a positive thing too.
Even more so when it's time to have a difficult conversation, I can not necessarily even protecting myself, but feeling like I need to protect the other person's feelings and things like that. And so I may not be vulnerable to the degree that I need to be.
Yes.
For us to actually make progress in that difficult conversation. How do we navigate that? How do we navigate being vulnerable with the difficult conversations? The conversations where I can't just text you and throw my phone away. You sitting right in my face.
I think for the people who can handle meat, right, and be challenged, understand that by not doing that, you are being disingenuous. You ain't being authentically you. So then who are you?
Right.
So, you know what I mean? And so there's that side of it. And then in the other side of it, less challenging side of it, it's understanding that communication is not just in your ability to speak. Communication is your ability to translate to another human being what you're thinking and feeling. And that's what I struggle with. I thought I was a great communicator. I have great vocabulary and good language, and I know how to write well and talk well. And then I realized I had horrible communication skills because I was limiting what I would share with people based on their capacity,
Or what you think their
what
capacity
I
is.
thought their capacity was. And it was my therapist that literally said to me, "You do not give the people around you enough credit."
Mm.
And I was like, nah, because I know everybody. I done examined everybody. I done diagnosed everybody. I know, I can tell you what everybody. And she was like, "You don't give them enough credit. You do not give the people around you enough credit. They can handle more than what you give them." And so I then started challenging myself along this journey of vulnerability of like, in those difficult conversations, let me not minimize or like, and then also just who do I think I am? Right? I'm the only person around me that has high capacity. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, so come off my pedestal,
The
and
savior
translate.
complex.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm used to that. No, let me. Other people are really gifted at being able to listen. Some people
Mm-hmm.
can handle more than what we give them. They really can. My niece was text me 2 weeks ago, like, "I gotta have this is going on." I said, "You need to have a conversation." I can't do that. She said, I can't have this conversation." I said, "Yes, you can." And so let's practice what that looks like, what that would sound like. What is it that you want to say? And then I'll help you filter through what might be, appropriate or whatever case may be. So I hear from our text yesterday. I'm like, "How'd that conversation go?" "It went great. Thank you so much." And I'm like, it would have went nowhere. And you would have built
Right.
all this resentment and had all of these emotions build up because you did not articulate what you feel. So I think
Mm.
realizing that people do have more capacity than what we think, in difficult conversations, you cannot protect people from everything, including you. You can't protect everybody from everything. And then understand that vulnerability is directly connected to fear of abandonment and fear of rejection. If I give you this, then you may reject me or you may abandon me. Or if I give you this, you might abandon or reject me, not because you mad at me for what I said, but because I made you feel away. I don't want to give negative things because my job is to make people feel good. So what happens when I'm the bad guy? When I've got to share something negative, when I've got to change that role, when I've got to, whatever the case may be, are they going to withdraw from me? Will they remove themselves from me? That's a fear of abandonment. It's a fear of
Mm-hmm.
rejection. Vulnerability is pushing past that anyway. You share it. If you got the right vocabulary, if you have the proper language, you do that. And some people don't talk because they don't know what to say. Find
Mm-hmm.
the language and communicate
Which is a great way to introduce your book, right?
it. Yes.
Because your book talks about the process of filtering through
Yes.
all of that. And
Yes.
so tell us about your book, how you got there, all the things.
Yeah, so Evangelist Gloria White actually made a statement to me over 10 years ago. And I was in her office, back in the day in church, you get in trouble, you had to, you had to go in the office. And so I was in the office and we were having a conversation. And so she said something to me. She was like, "Take no offense." And I was like, I'm mad, right? I'm hot. You just witnessed this whole entire thing. Like, what do you? I'm like, "What do you mean take no offense?" She's like, "Take no offense," and she was like, "It's what the Bible says." She said, "But it's a very literal thing, which means if you can take no offense, that means you choose to take offense, which
Mm.
means offense is a choice. You can take it or not take it." And I was like, I'm offended, right? Walking, like, I don't know what she's
I'm
talking
offended that
about.
you said
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Now I'm double offended. I'm taking all of it with me, right? And so it stayed with me. And so I started sitting down and writing. I knew I needed to write something. And for some reason, that was just what, was on me. Very simple read, very easy read. It's on Amazon. I've had people that have finished it in one setting, like they just sat down and just read it. Very easy. I work in the school system. I work in, the inner city. And so I also wanted to write something where if my students ever picked up my book, they would not feel intimidated by it. So
Mm.
very easy read, very short, kind of to the point. It's the process of filtering through offense. We hear through the lens of our wounds.
Mm-hmm.
So most of how we hear is through the lens of whatever our wound is. and people who are unhealed are highly offended. And so, talk about all of that, try to get a little bit to the root of it, and talk about if you want to if you want to be less offended, then you've got to do more healing. And so that's just it. So, people have enjoyed it. I've gotten pretty good feedback, and people are trying to push me to write another one. So I guess it's pretty okay. I guess it's okay.
So what does vulnerability look like when you don't take offense? Do you say to the person, I'm not offended? What does vulnerability look like when you are choosing not to take offense?
Yeah. I think when you choose not to take offense, the vulnerability might just be within you and yourself, because it becomes that internal conflict that by nature. And here's the thing about taking offense: it don't mean that what the person did or said wasn't offensive. It don't mean I can't be offended. It's that I'm choosing not to. And so it's putting down those internal guards, that internal thing, and just deciding that I am just not going to allow that. Most of what we experience as pain now is irritation of old wounds.
Yeah.
And so vulnerability is just acknowledging I've got some old wounds, and those old wounds wants to gravitate to that offense because it needs justification. But I'm vulnerable enough to acknowledge that exists, but then to choose that I'm not going to take in that as being offensive. And it don't mean it ain't offensive. It just means I'm not doing that. So I think the vulnerability of that is internal, and people may never see the vulnerability that comes with not taking offense. And we call it the high road or the bigger person and things like that. But it's vulnerability because, again, vulnerability is not just weakness, it's emotional strength. I'm strong enough emotionally that I don't need to feed my wound this offense.
I'm strong enough emotionally that I don't need to feed my wounds this offense. I am strong enough emotionally. Did you hear what you just said?
Now that you're saying it back,
I don't need to feed my wounds this offense.
Yeah.
Because I want to stay emotionally healthy.
I want to stay emotionally healthy. I like my emotional strength. Yeah. So prosperity, right?
Yeah.
And I want to stay in that lane, that realm.
So Sasha, listen, we're gonna let them sit with that right there.
Yeah.
We're gonna let them sit with that right there because this was so good, so good. For those who want to connect with you, reach out to you, all the things, how do they find you?
Okay. Facebook, LaSaisha McFadden, LaSaisha McFadden. Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Sash, SAISH117. So you guys can find me on social media. The book is on Amazon, no offense. And yeah, let's connect. I know I'm here. I know I'm on this earth. And it is to help people. And I want to do as much of that as I possibly can. And I'm super grateful and appreciative of this opportunity, to reach people and to collaborate with what you're doing, and you're trailblazing. We talked earlier of how there's no real roadmap for what you're doing. And so now you become the roadmap, and you set the way for many of us. So on behalf of all of us that will follow behind you, thank you. We are grateful for you and the generations that you will never meet, that will be blessed because of you. So thank you.
Wow. This has been incredible. I always know when an episode is incredible when I got some more soul searching to do afterwards. Like, woohoo, let me get this together. So what we like to do when we're signing off, we want you to have any parting words. If there's just one more thing you want to share, it could be as random as, go have some McDonald's fries. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want it to be. Just share your parting words with us.
Listen, everybody, you are not beyond repair. You're not beyond repair. No matter what you have experienced or what you've gone through in life, you're not beyond repair. Do some soul searching, do some heart mending, get you some help, go sit on somebody's couch, find you a life coach, get you some help, a safe space somewhere where you can be a better you. There is more to life There's more life beyond pain. There's more to you than who you had to become in order to survive. And so live a happy and fulfilled life. It is possible and you can be healed. And yes, go get you some McDonald's fries.
I love it. I love it. And just one thing I want to insert before we sign off today. Sasha is a counselor, but she is also a certified life coach. And so, with counselors, a lot of times you're restricted to a certain state and things like that where you're licensed. But she is a certified life coach, which means she can coach anyone, anywhere. So,
Yes.
if this has been helpful for you today, please make sure you reach out to her, as she has everything you need. Take you to that next level in your life and in your soul. And for Sasha, thank you so much for being with me today. And for those who are listening, thank you for listening and for joining us today. And until next time, may your heart find peace, your spirit find strength, and your soul find its sanctuary. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave a review, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with a friend. Your support helps us reach more people on their soul journey. Remember, business prosperity, life prosperity, any prosperity hinges on the prosperity of your soul. If you're looking to unlock your true potential, align with your purpose, and find clarity in your path, consider soul coaching. Visit tamika.online for your complimentary soul discovery call or to learn more about how soul coaching can support your journey. That's Tamika, TAMEEKA.online. Until next time, this has been your Soul Reset.